All right. I believe this particular show here will be interesting for a couple reasons. A, it will have a particular Tennessee state senator on here that's talking about the current events that just got through happening in downtown Nashville. And also, this will be their last show for the year 2020. So if you don't mind, please listen up.
Exactly. We need a Google translator for his tweets. NBC's Josh Shetterman joining us this morning. Thank you.
We now go to Nashville for the latest on the Christmas Day bombing there. Law enforcement sources tell NBC News they don't yet have enough evidence to point to a particular motive, but a possible break in the case as authorities move in on a home in the suburbs. FBI agents searched a house southeast of the city belonging to a 63-year-old man, Anthony Quinn Warner. On Google Street View, an RV can be seen in Warner's backyard. You see that there highlighted? Well, that RV matches the photo and description of the one that police say exploded downtown. NBC's Shaq Brewster is there with the latest for us. Shaq, good morning. What's the FBI saying about this possible lead, and what do we know about Warner? We know he's not a person of interest yet.
That's right, and this was clearly the FBI acting on one of the more than 500 leads and tips that they say they have received since that Christmas morning bombing that, of course, took them to the home of that 63-year-old man in Antioch, Tennessee. That's about 15 minutes away from where I'm standing right now. Now, you mentioned this, but I think it bears repeating. Two senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News that they have not gathered enough evidence to point to any particular motive, and you said that they're not calling this man a suspect, and they're not even calling him a person of interest at this point, but it's clear with the searches that we've been seeing and them spending time at his home yesterday that there is a level of interest and attention that they are giving to him. Now, these officials say that they have looked into a possible digital footprint. They've looked at his social media pages. They have not been able to find anything there. We also know that RV was parked in front of an AT&T transmission center. So that brings them to look to see, is there any connection that he may have with AT&T? They have not found anything there. So their work clearly continues. Again, they are not calling him a suspect or even a person of interest at this point. We'll wait to see if we get any updates on that today. Meanwhile, at the blast site, that massive area that investigators are still combing through, still looking to see if there's any evidence, finding that physical evidence and piecing it together with what they know. Listen to what they told us about the complexities of trying to process that site.
It's quite a challenge. Having been up there and seen that scene, it's like a giant jigsaw puzzle created by a bomb that throws pieces of evidence across multiple city blocks. And they've got to gather it, they've got to catalog it, they've got to put it back together and try to find out what the picture of that puzzle looks like.
One of the key pieces of evidence that they have said they found at that site is, of course, what they're describing as human tissue, some possible remains that they've discovered. They have not put an identification on those remains. They have not said where those remains could have come from, perhaps inside the RV or outside of the RV. But that is something that they're continuing to go through as they're processing this massive site. And as the downtown Nashville area still remains pretty much closed. You see, we're several blocks away from where that actual bomb site was.
Shaquille Brewster in Nashville with those late-breaking details. Thank you. And joining us now is Democrat Congressman Steve Cohen of Tennessee. And Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. Our thoughts are obviously with what's happening right now in your home. I just wanted to ask your first thoughts or anything.
I thought he was a senator. Excuse me, he's a congressman.
Anything you want to share about the situation going on, and are you learning anything that you might be able to share with us?
Well, Nashville's our capital city, and it's a great city. Second Avenue is one of the great entertainment streets in that city, along with Broadway. And this man wanted to make a statement, apparently, whether it was about the AT&T or some other facility on Second Avenue, or maybe just on Second Avenue in Nashville. I don't know. But it's so sad that he's done this to a great American city and caused so much destruction and damage. It's a very sad situation.
I couldn't help but kind of think about the contrast. Just last week Sunday, we were talking with you as a proud Tennessean, talking about how so many of your fellow Tennesseans were taking part in that second rollout of the Moderna drug. And now, fast forward to this week, we have Tennessee once again on the map, but for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it is. It is a big contrast. And of course, we're still fighting the corona. We will be, and the vaccine needs to be distributed. But this man, there are sick people all over this country, and Tennessee has its share. This man obviously was very disturbed. Anybody that would cause that kind of destruction, it's terrorism, really. It's urban terrorism, domestic terrorism. And I don't know whether it's this man, Anthony Quinn Warner, and or who it is, but whatever it is, it's sad. It's caused a lot of destruction or changes people's lives. One of my friends was in Nashville, and she was interviewed with the LA Magazine, and she was at the 21C hotel, and they came and cleared them out. There were just a few people there because of the coronavirus, but they went out. She said 19-degree weather, and they had taken away from the hotel, gone to a new hotel, and they haven't been able to get to their belongings or their car yet because the street's been closed. So it's caused a lot of disturbances to a lot of families.
Congressman, I know you're in Memphis, but you know that downtown area of Nashville is so iconic. The governor of your state is asking for emergency declaration from President Trump. We have 41 buildings damaged or destroyed in this bombing. How will the downtown area rebuild, knowing that this is happening right now when the area is likely already crippled from the pandemic?
It's going to be difficult, and we certainly need the help of the federal government. The federal government is the provider of aid in crises. This is the Stafford Act and a safety net for the American public. And the destruction is humongous. They need help with clearing up the destruction, and there's going to be a whole lot of people fixing windows and fixing buildings. I think 2 buildings might have succumbed to the damage, and then after the blast, they fell down. So there's going to be destruction that's going to have to be the rebuilding. Buildings, businesses will close. There are restaurants on that street. There are law firms, but there are a lot of restaurants. And they certainly will have, they've had a hit from coronavirus. They'll have an extra hit here. So it's a devastating loss. And hopefully that the president can take a little bit of time off his golf game and help the people of Nashville.
A long road to recovery indeed there. While we have you, while we're talking about the president, his golf game, etc., what sort of phone calls or emails are you guys doing right now? Are you all reaching out to the administration, to fellow Republicans to try to see if you can figure out something? Because there's so many millions of Americans that are just left outside in the cold right now, broke.
Yeah, it's really a shame. This is a time the government needs to be in action. And last week, the Congress did act. They acted on behalf of the American people to provide the $900 billion CARES package, HEROES Act, reduced. The Democrats passed a bill in the House last summer that provided over $2 trillion.
But what are you guys doing today? How are you trying to fix the situation that we're in right now?
Well, Speaker Pelosi went to the floor, offered unanimous consent to get the $2,000 passed. Hopefully that would help with the president. The Republicans object to that. We're going to have a session tomorrow to look into passing the $2,000 bill again. Now, the previous tweet that you mentioned, it sounds like that's not sufficient. He wants $2,000 maybe not just for the husband and the wife, but also per child. So he's moving the goalpost along. And it's really strange. We don't need a Google interpretation. We need a psychiatric interpretation. We are at mercy at responding to a man who is not in concert with the difficult times people are facing with evictions coming up and the eviction moratorium ending and with unemployment compensation ending. And all he's concerned about is the debt. Let him eat cake. Will E.T. call home? Donald Trump, you're still president. You do more things to pardon more criminals and corrupt politicians and your family members and people that kept their mouths shut to keep you being cited with some crimes. Act for the American people, the people you allegedly care about, but he shows he cares about one person, and that's Donald Trump.
And there I was doing it all wrong, asking Siri and Google for answers. You corrected me, I guess, Congressman Steve Cohen. Thank you.
You're welcome, Candace. I hate to correct you, but the man's a psychiatric problem. He's not a tech problem.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, that super contagious COVID strain has now reached North America. Canada confirming its first 2 cases, raising even bigger concerns that it could already be spreading within the U.S.
And this is our last show of 2020. We're going to be bringing you some of the most memorable images of the year, starting with the Black Lives Matter protests that sparked one of the largest moments in the U.S. history. A year ago, Christmas of last year, Breonna Taylor tweeted that she was hoping to have kids next year so that she can enjoy Christmas the way other parents do. Think about that.
Nothing beats the fun of new technology during the holiday.
Here in the United States, 1 in 1,000.
Demand. Go to watchcruise.com.
We're back now with a stunning new statistic here in the United States. 1 in 1,000 Americans have died from COVID-19 since the first reported case in late January. It's mind-boggling. The infection count nearing 20 million right now.
And of course, we know one of the hardest hit places right now is California. ICU beds have been running out. They're out. And now they hope stay-at-home orders will help slow the spread. NBC's Scott Cohen has the latest.
Candace and Lindsay, the numbers in California are simply daunting. And this is the first state in the country to really blow past 2 million COVID cases. 36 people died on Christmas Day as the state closes in now on 24,000 COVID-19 deaths. But it's the forward-looking numbers that have folks especially concerned. This is a state with something like 8,000 intensive care beds. That capacity is all full. What that means is there are not enough beds based on the state's formula to not only accommodate people with COVID-19, but also other people who might go into intensive care, nor is there the staff to accommodate everyone. So here at San Francisco General Hospital, for example, they do still have some intensive care beds, but they are trying to conserve them now. They are not able now to take patients from other parts of the state where ICU beds are full. The hope is that the regional stay-at-home orders, which have been in place in some cases since the beginning of December, are starting to flatten the curve, but it's a very slow process. Some of those orders were potentially going to expire as soon as next week. It's almost certain now that they will be extended into January, as this state still deals now with what may be the worst yet surge in this COVID crisis that this state has been dealing with since early this year. This is one of the first states, of course, to be hit with COVID-19 cases. They did very well in flattening the curve early on, but right now, California is certainly in a crisis. Lindsay, Candace, back to you.
Scott Cohen, thank you.
All right, for more on all of this and the nation's battle with the pandemic, we're joined right now by Dr. Blythe Adamson, the advisor at Testing for America and infectious disease epidemiologist. Doctor, thank you for being here. We're seeing some scary news stats. That one, I just want to highlight it once again, showing 1 in 1,000 Americans have died from COVID. It's a staggering number. Is this as bad as it gets, or what's the potential in the next few months?
Well, it does get worse because there will be more deaths over time. And we do see new threats, like the mutant virus that's coming to us from the UK. But I still see so much hope on the horizon as we have vaccines roll out that are so incredibly effective.
Yeah, but vaccines are rolling out, and it seems really slowly right now. 2 weeks ago when we were talking, so many people from the CDC said possibly by the end of this year, some 20 million people would have had at least one of the shots. So far, we're just a little over 1 million.
Yeah, I would say that we're going to be learning how to create efficiencies in the system as we go. And, CDC and the leadership at Operation Warp Speed have done incredible planning to get us there. But, stepping back and thinking about how this virus works and how the vaccines that are coming out may interact with protecting us from the current circulating strain and the new virus. If you just step back, you think about antibodies, say in this shape, induced by the vaccine or by recovering from infection. They bind to the part of the virus that's the spike protein. And a good match means that an antibody binds to the spike and it tells our bodies to kill the virus. But this new mutant that we're seeing will then change a little bit the shape of this spike. And what we're waiting to understand, what we think and we hope, is that the antibodies that in our bodies will still be able to bind. But as COVID mutates over time, we may need to update the vaccine so that it continues to bind to the new circulating strains.
That's fascinating and a great way to lay it out. I really appreciate you making it so simple so that I can understand it. But in talking about that mutant strain, we know that it's in Canada and more than a dozen countries. And there are some that are saying that we don't have the capability here in the US to be able to test for it, to even know if it's already here.
Well, this is why there's continued urgency for COVID testing, for detecting these cases, and also for sequencing them so we can understand which strains are circulating around. As the vaccine rolls out and we see possible breakthrough infections among people who have been vaccinated, say in the fall of 2021, we want to be able to understand, is that because the durability of the vaccine, the protection wore off? Or is it, on the other hand, because the new mutant viruses are so different, the vaccine doesn't recognize it and protect us from it. So this is why we need to continue to be testing, and even possibly testing people who are sick after vaccination and sequencing so that we can understand this virus better.
All right, Dr. Vlad Adamson, thank you so much for giving us the ABCs of the vaccine. Kept expecting you'd get to the chalkboard any moment now with it.
That's next week.
That's next week's lessons. Thank you.
I guess I'm a visual learner. I finally get it. All right, that was so good. The race is on, of course, to deploy the vaccine globally. The EU, Canada, here in the US, we've all started to vaccinate. But many other countries, it could take years before people get their shots. Years. So some are turning to China and Russia for a solution, even though their trials haven't wrapped up yet. NBC's Bill Neely has more details.
In the global race between injections and infections, millions have now been vaccinated against the COVID virus. In China, where it first appeared, more than 20 vaccines are in production, several approved and now being sent abroad.
Big problem.
The governor of Brazil's most populous state says he'll try to force people to have one of the Chinese vaccines next month, in a country with the second highest death toll in the world after the US. Yet China hasn't finished trials for its key vaccines.
We haven't seen that yet.
But scientists also acknowledge the urgent demand.
There's no border to this pandemic, and there shouldn't be a border to the vaccine.
Russia's Sputnik vaccine is another shot in the dark. Its final clinical trial results still unpublished.
It doesn't mean that the vaccines are unsafe. And I would argue that to make that assumption is a terrible mistake.
But many Russians are skeptical.
I think it's dangerous.
I'm scared of this very much. And maybe I'll take it, yeah, why not?
Yet the European vaccine maker, AstraZeneca, has signed a deal with Russia to develop vaccines. The Pfizer vaccine, which needs ultra-cold storage, may never reach the poorest parts of the world. Many countries can't afford costly Western vaccines.
There is a need for the world to receive this vaccine. There should be access everywhere.
Which is why G20 leaders pledged last month to share vaccines with poorer nations.
The Chinese virus.
But vaccine nationalism won't end soon. Who was first? Whose is the best? Who's the most generous? The race is still on as the virus mutates and thousands die by the day. Never before has the whole world set out to vaccinate its population. But with rich countries making and buying up most of the vaccines, it could be years before millions in developing nations get one. And the problem for us? Well, no one is safe until we're all safe.
That's what we hear from doctors. Bill Neely, thank you.
All right, back here at home, some big developments out of Nashville. The FBI searching the home of a man where a Google Street View image shows an RV matching the one that exploded on Christmas Day. Our terrorism expert weighs in. And don't miss the 10th annual Revive Awards today, live on Politics Nation. Reverend Al Sharpton and his panel will celebrate the best and worst of 2020 and give awards to those who deserve it. That's at 5 p.m. Eastern right here. Rev is brushing off the tuxedo right now for it. Were found outside and inside of the building. Police currently have a 37-year-old man in custody, yet the motive is still unknown. And it's also not clear why people were at this venue in Rockford, Illinois, which was supposed to be closed down under Illinois pandemic restrictions. More on this as we get it.
And we're also following breaking news in Nashville. Federal agents there searched a home in Antioch, Tennessee, that's southeast of the city. And this Google Street View image led them there. It shows an RV with a description matching the one that was blown up on Christmas Day. And the home is said to belong to 63-year-old Anthony Quinn Warner.
Okay, so here's what we know right now. So far, the FBI hasn't gathered any of the evidence that we know of that can point to a particular motive. Warner has no meaningful social media presence that we found, according to officials, and investigators are combing his digital devices. The RV was parked outside an AT&T building, but so far the company says they have no known history with Warner. And joining me right now is Malcolm Nance, who's an MSNBC terrorism analyst and the author of Plot to Destroy America. So, Malcolm, what gives?
You know, we are in a period right here until we get more data about the mindset of the bomber, where we're really not going to know precisely what motivated him to do this. My team scrubs the digital world for all sorts of extremism, and we found virtually nothing on this guy. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't motivated by a particular philosophy or ideology. It's just that the FBI and law enforcement have yet to gain that. Sometimes you have these attackers who have an ideology that is stuck in their head, and they never impart it to anybody else. You know, in the famous counterterrorism book that was written in the 70s, Criminals, Crusaders, and Crazies, the craziest part is rarely touched upon, but they do actually perpetrate acts of terrorism for whatever they think is going on. The FBI has mentioned, has interviewed people, and it asked them if they knew anything about his belief in the 5G conspiracy theory, which is the belief that 5G radio waves are spreading coronavirus, and it leads into the whole QAnon world. We don't know that. I think the FBI are going on that lead simply because of the target area where that device was left.
So Nashville police say the city is safe. They've combed the area for secondary devices. They haven't found anything. Thankfully, they brought in bomb dogs. Do you think this is a one-time occurrence, or do you think, hopefully not, but do you think we could see copycats here?
You know, there's always going to be a copycat at one point. I mean, people don't realize that weeks after 9/11, a young kid flew an airplane into a building in Florida, to commit suicide. So these things happen. But it could be that this is a particularly unique circumstance where this bomber had a reason to do this that, again, was only known to him. And maybe he didn't go out on social media. Maybe he didn't use social media. Maybe he was driven by something else. But that doesn't mean that there are people out there that don't believe that this is some part of a leading edge of a wave for them to carry out infrastructure attacks or personal attacks. You know, we have this saying in counterterrorism, the second attack is, always an American, no matter where it is in the world. People get this notoriety, they see the television coverage, and then they want to, popularize their own beliefs.
This is video right now of FBI investigators leaving the home of Warner with bags of evidence there.
Yeah, and the governor of Tennessee, in the meantime, Malcolm, his name's Bill Lee, he has now requested federal assistance from President Trump. The president was briefed on the explosion, as was President-elect Joe Biden. But President Trump has made no mention of it on Twitter or elsewhere, not even on Twitter. You think that he would respond and give some Tennesseans some aid by now.
You know, in my 35 years in counterterrorism, I have heard hundreds of presidential statements, at least expressing empathy with the victims of this attack. And there were victims in this attack. People lived on that street. The businesses are devastated. And if you've not seen the photographs of what happened to that street from this device, you really should. Hopefully we'll hear from the president at some point. Maybe he's just holding his tongue on advice of counsel so that he can find out what the motivation of this individual was. But people are hurt. Downtown Nashville, I know that street, I know that block. There's some fine places there. They are just going to need federal support here. This was a terrorist attack, no matter what, because the purpose of the bomber was to influence an audience beyond the immediate victims with a message that we have yet to discern.
Malcolm Nance, truer words can't be spoken when you see all that devastation there of how those businesses are suffering. Thank you so much for your time today.
That'll do it for today. To my viewers, good luck to all of us. Hopefully the officials will be able to nail this particular event and how come it happened, who done it, why they done it, what their motives was, and pray to God that it won't happen again. I'm just so leery of the fact of seeing possible copycats and people that are disoriented in their minds towards them possibly trying to do something like this again. We really need to pray for each other to become united and not divided. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us, and shalom.